Blog Talk Radio.
You're about to hear a revolution in talk radio. Liberty Talk Radio, where the critical thinking will defrag your mind of propaganda-ridden viruses induced by mass media news programming. No BS here, just the facts.
And now we present to you America's quintessential iconoclastic anomaly. Wow. In talk radio, your host, Joe Cristiano.
Talk Radio, I'm your host, Joe Cristiano. Folks, it's time for us to take back control of our government. Now, before this bureaucratic, oversized, and self-serving federal government starves us of our property, our freedom, our rights, our liberty. But in order to do this, we need to shed conventional thinking regarding our political structure. We need to be revolutionaries in thought, dissidents in action. Only after we recognize what our government is doing to our freedom and our Constitution will we start taking it back. And this is what this program is all about. Folks, today we have no guest, believe it or not. I'm going to just discuss several issues that I think are current, and you may have questions in your own mind as to which position to take. I will give you my take on it, and then you can incorporate that in your thought process to see if it makes any sense. Now, during this broadcast, I'd love for you to call our call-in number 646-652-4620. That's 646-652-4620. Whether you agree, disagree, or have a question, please call in. All calls are welcome. You will not be interrupting me. Please call me anytime. And my nose is itchy for some reason. I'm sorry about that. Boy. Anyway, we also have a toll-free number if you want to use that of 855-866-1170, but use either number that you want. If you're going to listen in on the phone, for the entire hour, use the 646 number, please. Okay. Now, the first item I'd like to start with is Donald Trump. And I know he's been getting a tremendous amount of press lately, and rightfully so. And I received more questions regarding Donald Trump than even more than ISIS. I mean, I get questions on Donald Trump constantly. And I can understand why. Now, I want to give you my take on Donald Trump. And this is going to sound strange, but I enjoy listening to Donald Trump. And you say, well, Joe, you can't possibly, being a classical liberal, you can't possibly be agreeing with him. No, I don't agree with him, but I love listening to him. Now, the reason for that is because he is running for political office, and people who are running for political office are being politically correct. Here we have a gentleman, who is running for political office, but is not politically correct. Now, that's his strong card. Let's compare him to, let's say, a Hillary Clinton, or any other the Republican candidates. Hillary Clinton, every word is massaged, managed, and homogenized before she says it. Now, she slips up a lot, but everything is orchestrated, and people know that. I mean, she's always saying the right sounding things, although they don't logically make no sense. And then she has a crowd in front of her that she pays, and everyone cheers and all this other good stuff. And they know it's orchestrated. And even people who are Hillary Clinton supporters, know that's the game that has to be played. And the same thing with the Republicans. They're about the same way. Donald Trump, at least, and in fact, he's number one in some states, and he hasn't spent a penny on his campaign yet. And yet, the reason people are so attracted to him, as I am, and I would not vote for him, let me be honest with you, I would not vote for him, I love listening to him, right, is because at least he's honest with himself. He believes in what he says, and he says it. He said, damn the torpedoes type thing. I don't care if it's politically correct, incorrect. I don't care if someone feels like they're getting slighted or they misinterpret what I say. This is coming from me. This is who I am. And people are finding this so refreshing that even if they don't agree with him, they like listening with him to him. And I can understand that. And I think we have come to a point where people are so fed up, incredibly fed up with all of the political mandering, the jockeying around of what words mean and, what the word is, and all that garbage. We are so fed up with it, so sick with it, that we actually enjoy hearing from someone who is speaking their mind, albeit maybe a nut. He's wrong on the immigration issue. He's wrong on ISIS. He's wrong on the military. He's wrong on all those issues, 100% wrong. But at least he's not saying it because some advisor said this is what you should say today. I know it's different than yesterday. At least say this today and maybe we can cover it up and then eventually it'll go away. And people like that. People are hungry, folks. They are absolutely hungry for honesty in government, for people to be who they are. If they believe in something, if they know something that's critical to our nation, to say so. But don't withhold it because it's politically a political liability or politically incorrect. Say it and do it. This is what people want to hear. And that's why Donald Trump is doing so well. Now, who he's doing irreparable harm to? He's doing irreparable harm to those people who are most associated with the establishment. And to that, I say kudos to Donald Trump, because the establishment needs to get its behind whipped really bad, especially Hillary Clinton and Jeb Bush. Those two need to get just absolutely smashed, right out of the place. Because they are towing the old lines. They're part of the old establishment. They're part of the banking system. And if there's one thing we need to get rid of, we need to get rid of all those people aligned with the banks and the industrial complexes. And both of them are the quintessential keystones of that, the cornerstones of that. Right? So to that I say, welcome Donald Trump. I'm glad to see you around. I wish you were a libertarian or a classical liberal. If you were, I would be campaigning for you right now. Unfortunately, I can't because I think you're wrong, but I love hearing from you, okay? And let me hear your thoughts about Donald Trump, 646-652-4620. All right. The second thing I want to bring up is that
Remember, you have to press 1.
Oh, yes. I was just reminded, please, if you do call in, press 1 so I'll know that you're just not listening by phone, but that you do want to ask a question. So after you dial the number, press the 1 button, and then we'll know that you want to at least ask a question or make a comment. Now, in line with that, of course, Donald Trump has this securing the borders and, probably have, machine guns at the border shooting everyone as they come through. I don't know what he has, but it's radical. And I said, well, why don't we do something, correct two wrongs? The first wrong would be not allowing immigrants to come in here to work. That's wrong. The reason why people are illegal is because the federal government establishes a certain number, and I used to know these numbers, and I'll apologize in advance if I'm wrong, but something like 300,000 people from Mexico are allowed to come in, and but after that, 300,001, that person's illegal. I mean, they have to apply for papers. But if you apply for a paper and you're 300,001, you don't get them. So if you come over, you're illegal. So if you look at it, the person is not illegal. The person just didn't meet some arbitrary parameters established by the Congress. And if you ask Congress, why 300,000? Well, that's probably what we need. And they really don't have an answer to that. And a lot of the data that they have is not correct. The way they use the data is not correct. And they just have a number. And they repeat this number year after year, and maybe they up it once in a while, depending on the economic situation. But there's still hundreds of thousands that come in illegally. Now, what is the difference between the person who's number 149,556 and the person 300,001? What is the difference between those two people? None. There's no difference. The only difference is that one person made it within the numbers and, got applied earlier than the other person. So why would you not allow the other person in when we need people, to do the work that they want to do? If there was no work for them, they wouldn't be coming in here. They would be going south, not north. During the Depression, immigration from Mexico absolutely came to a halt. They weren't coming over. Guess why? There were no jobs. I mean, it's a matter of supply and demand, and all Mexico is doing is exercising their right to believe in the principle of supply and demand. There's a demand for their labor, and they have the supply. They want to meet that challenge, and that would be right. But our government is so screwed up. We have these artificial numbers, and that screws everything up. But as much as I hate any reference to a minimum wage, I'm going to change the subject for a second, then I'll come back to immigration. There should be no minimum wage laws at all on anyone. The government has no right to tell any employer who to hire, how much to pay, how many hours. That's none of the government's business. That's the business of the employee. The employee doesn't like the terms of employment. They don't work there. That's very simple. That's a free enterprise system. We have no free enterprise system now. We have a government control system, which we must dismantle. All right. The reason why I bring up the minimum wage is that although I hate the minimum wage in every aspect, in every way, shape, or form, let's just keep the minimum wage the way it is, just for the sake of this discussion. And how about we do this? We say, fine, if you want to come in from Mexico, that's fine. But you are not entitled to any of the restrictions that are placed on employers, for naturally born citizens. For example, the minimum wage would not apply to you. If you came over from Mexico and you work here, and the guy says, "Fine, do you want to pick lettuce or whatever the case may be, or work on a farm, or haul bricks or whatever? I'm going to pay you $2 an hour." I mean, and you have no recourse. You can say, "Well, I take $2 an hour, or I go back to Mexico." Why would that not, in and of itself, equalize both sides? I mean, if a person's to say, well, I can work for $1 an hour here in Mexico, or I have to travel hundreds of miles to the United States to work for $1 an hour, I'll stay home. I mean, that's the way it would seem. Well, you can solve the immigration problem by just not making people who are immigrants that come here eligible for the minimum wage. Period. Bingo. And most likely, many of them would comply with that. They would work for less money. All right. Now, what's the feedback from that? What's the bleed over? Well, let's assume you have a person, instead of getting paid $7.25 an hour for picking lettuce, they're getting paid $4 an hour. What happens to the price of lettuce? The cost of lettuce goes down. Right. So when I go to the grocery store, my dollar buys more stuff. Right? In other words, the purchasing power of the dollar improves. That improves my financial position, my status in the United States, right? And is it at the expense of somebody else? Absolutely. I'm not discounting that. And I don't want that to happen, but I'm just saying that would solve that issue. Get rid of the minimum wage, and everyone would work for what they want. Now, if the person that comes here and says, "You want me to pick lettuce for $4 an hour?" Forget it. I'm out of here. And that's their prerogative. They go back to Mexico. I mean, so we can solve the immigration issue, just get the government out of the way. Guess what? Every time I have a solution, it's always get the government out of the way and we can solve the problem overnight. And it not only doesn't cost anything, but we save a lot of money on administration, and the people who are residents here in the United States wind up making more money. It's a win for absolutely everyone, and it's also a win for those people who want to work here, not under the guise of being illegal, but of being perfectly legal, albeit making a little bit less money. However, now, let's assume for a second I pick lettuce, and I can pick 10 heads of lettuce a minute, and I'm making it up. I have no idea what it is. But somebody else can pick 15 heads of lettuce a minute. And the guy says, "Hey, I'm faster than anybody else. I don't want to get paid $4 an hour. I want $5 an hour or $6 an hour." Now, as a farm owner, I'd say, "Hey, this guy's making me a lot more money. I lose this guy. I lose my best production guy, my best worker. I'm apt to pay him more money because he's producing more. In fact, you can pay according to what they produce. You get paid, for example, for every head of lettuce that you pick, you get 10 cents, or whatever the case may be. I'm making that up. So if a person comes here from another country and they pick 10 heads of lettuce a minute, they get paid $1. If the other person does 20, they get $2. And of course, please don't hang me on the mathematics here. I'm just giving you an idea. All right. So everyone, if we went back to a totally free market system, and I suggest that we go back to a free market system for the entire United States, not only for quote illegal, because you say illegal, it boggles my mind. It's almost like a religion. You can't understand it. It has a lot of words. A lot of books and all that, but no one understands it. Let's take two people. Right? You have one person who is born in one spot, right, and the other person is born in another spot, and these spots are only 3 feet away from each other. They're both born 3 feet away from each other. It just happens that in between them, is a border, an imaginary line. That's all the border is. I mean, the border is not fences and stuff like that. We built those things just recently, but it's an imaginary line. Now, the person who lives north of this border, just 3 feet away from the other person, is an American citizen. The person who was born south of the border is not an American citizen. What is the difference between those two people? Think about it. What is the difference between those people? Well, you know the answer to that. Absolutely nothing. It's just because some country initiated a artificial border that made these people Mexican citizens and these U.S. citizens. But why can't they just walk over those borders back and forth? That doesn't make the person in Mexico a U.S. citizen, doesn't make the person from the United States a Mexican citizen. They can go back and forth, they can trade. I mean, what if they both stood on both sides of the border, just a foot away from each other? One had 2 feet firmly planted on the U.S. side, and the other one had 2 feet firmly planted on the Mexican side. So they weren't violating any laws, right? And the American said, "Hey, would you like a chocolate bar?" And they took a chocolate bar out of their pocket and gave it to that person. What they just did is they were involved in international trade. There's all sorts of laws about that, trading between borders. Now you say, Joe, you got to be out of your mind. Well, of course I'm out of my mind. This country put me out of my mind. I haven't been sane for about 20, 30 years. Well, the principle is all the same. What difference does it make? Well, it's because they're on the other side of the border. That's why. That's the border's there. The border's there for a reason. No, there's no border there for any reason whatsoever. And remember that the entire southern United States was part of Mexico. We took it over when Mexico was when Santa Anna was the admiral or the general, I guess, of the army and the head of Mexico. And we slaughtered the Mexicans because they had a very weak army at the time. And we took over the whole part of the southern part of the United States. And we did that militarily. That was not part of the United States. That was part of Mexico. And then we drew this line, which was the Rio Grande, the Red River. And bingo, you couldn't come across. I shouldn't say Red River. The Red River is Oklahoma. I'm sorry. I had a lapse because I biked to the United States and I took the Red River from my head for some reason. But the Rio Grande. And it's just an absolute. If the Rio Grande would move or would circumvent where it is now and take a different path, all of a sudden the shape of the United States would change. I mean, you see what I mean? It's an imaginary line, and because it's an imaginary line, we construct all of these politically restrictive restraints that try to hold people to a certain standard of some sort, but none of it makes any sense. And then we have to have police forces and guards and fences and military people there, to enforce something that's not even enforceable, that it doesn't make any sense. So to Donald Trump and to all the other candidates that are all screaming secure the border, which they have no idea what they're talking about, let me suggest one thing. Get rid of the minimum wage. Have them come over. If they want to work for $1 an hour, fine. Boy, I'd love to get lettuce for 25 cents again. If they don't want to work for $1 an hour, they can go back to Mexico, maybe make more money there. How about having the free market determine that, rather than some person in Washington who has no idea what he's doing, who's trying to be politically correct and just only concerned is being reelected again so they can take in money with this crony capitalism. Them and their friends get filthy rich out of us, while under the guise of protecting our sovereignty. All right. Anyway, I just wanted to mention that. Just give a thought to getting rid of the minimum wage with foreign countries, with immigrants, and then how about we get rid of the minimum wage right across the board? Right across everyone. Look what's happening here around the United States. More and more people are losing their jobs. The slowest job growth is between the ages of 16 to 20. Slowest job growth. One of the higher job growths are people who are older, like 55 and older, because these people have experience, they have value, they've been proven in the marketplace, and they can find jobs because they can produce things. People are coming out of our government school systems, which should be totally disbanded. Every school closed. Every school closed. If someone wants to open up a private school and a parent wants to send that child to that private school, that's their business. That I agree with. But get rid of all the public schools. We're producing numbnuts. Kids are just being graduated from these schools, and they don't know anything. They have no skills. They're being is indoctrinated, and then they watch television and stuff like that, and they become just droids. They're horrible. I mean, that people don't learn to think anymore, and our teachers have forgotten how to think because they're products of the school system. But we have all of these systems in here that are preventing people from getting jobs. So you have a high school graduate that had average marks out of an average school, and they come out, and what are they capable of doing? Basically nothing. They have that, unless they developed a talent or a skill, they have absolutely no talent or skill or whatever to offer an employee. So the employer, when the employer takes a person in, and I'm an employer, right? When people come to us and say, I would like to have a job, I say, what do you do? Nothing. I mean, they don't know anything about it. I said, what do you know about our business? Nothing. I said, okay, so what you want me to do is you want me to hire you, right, under all of the restrictions that the government places on me, that I have to train you, pay you at least $7.25 an hour, and of course, my employees make triple $7.25 an hour, but that's another point. But for the next 3 weeks, you want me to send you to school. They said, oh, no, I want to work. I said, but what do you know? They said, what do you know about my business? They said, nothing. I said, well, then I have to train you. They go, oh, yeah, it's on the job training. I go, well, what's the difference between that and going to school? And they can't answer the question. I said, don't you understand, son, that if I hire you, I have to literally put you into my school, if you will, for about 2 or 3 weeks. I have to take a technician who now is being profitable. I mean, it's profitable to the companies producing things. And I have to take that technician to work with you to train you. I said, who's going to pay my technician to train you? He says, well, I do. I said, but wait a minute. I'm paying you. So you mean I have to pay a technician to train you, and while you're being trained, I have to pay you. I said, now, let's assume, all right, I decide to do that. Now, of course, that's what I do, and that's what we wind up doing. I said, but what happens after 3 weeks if you decide, this job is not for me, I'm out of here, and you quit? Do I get my money back? Do you give me my training back? What do I get for it? They say, well, you get nothing. You lose everything. I said, but then how much are you going to pay me to train you? Did you not pay to go to school? Now, I know you didn't pay to walk into your classroom, but your parents paid taxes to pay for the public school system that you're a graduate of. Your taxes paid for school. You went to school. A result of going to your school was what? You know how to do nothing. I mean, think about it. I mean, you go to school, you come out, what do you know how to do? Nothing. 13 years. 13, from kindergarten all the way to high school, if you didn't get left back and be 14, 15 years. But 13 years of schooling. Think of this, 13 years of schooling, and what can a student do when they get out? Nothing. Could you imagine saying, we are going to have a school system where we're going to have kids go almost every day of their lives for 13 years, except for a short summer break. 13 years, and when they get out of school, they are going to know nothing. They can do nothing. They are worth nothing. No employer would touch them with a 10-foot pole, So please, don't be late in paying your taxes to the school system. Does that make any sense? That is the reality. So then the government being so benevolent to the people, because employers like myself, we are so mean and rotten that the first thing I do when I walk into the place is I get my whip and I whip all my employees till they're bleeding to death. That's the perception that everyone has. So I'm the bad guy, and now you've got to punish me. You've got to punish me by coming in and applying for a job for my company. Because you're going to have to tell me, after you spent your money into a school system that resulted in me knowing nothing, now you have to take your time, your money, your productivity, put that aside, and train me all over again. You have to send me back to school because the money you spent, the tens of thousands of dollars you spent to keep me in the classroom, was absolutely worthless. Now, that's the reality. I've never met a high school student that came out and said, high school was pretty good. I learned this, and that, and as a result, I can do all these things. Never once. Never. I'm 72 years old. I'm still waiting for that once. Now, are there kids that's taken the initiative, students that have taken the initiative to learn on their own, to take what they've got from high school and furthered it and said, geez, I really want to do this, and then gone to the library and done things? Dr. Ben Carson is an example of that. His mother said, you're not sitting on the streets, you're not standing on the streets, you're going to sit in the library and you're going to learn to read. And he became a world-renowned neurosurgeon. He's running for president. He's a good man. But how many people do that? I mean, 1 out of 10,000? It's not even measurable. So the government wants me. Now, let's assume for a second, after 3 weeks, this guy doesn't really work out that well. Right? And I fire him. Now, I can't say the guy's a bummer. It's not the job, not for him. There's a good chance I'm going to get stuck with an unemployment tax because he's going to apply for unemployment. Now, go on unemployment for a year. Or whatever it is, 2 years, whatever it is, not work, and I'm going to pay for it. Now, let's summarize this. I paid 13 years of schooling for this kid. Kid learns nothing, comes to me, says, I know nothing, now you have to train me. I hire him, pay him, take somebody off of the job to train him, right? So I'm paying double or triple because the person that's training him is getting paid 2 and 3 times the amount as he's getting paid. I take him off. I lose income because this person is not producing anything. He's training this person, right? So I'm paying there. Person quits. I wind up, my unemployment penalty goes up, right? So he stays out of a job for 2 years. For the next 2 years or a year, whatever it is these days, I'm going to be paying that extra amount. I mean, I pay, I get nothing. Absolutely nothing. And why? Because of the government. Because of the government's stupid school system, which is dumb and stupid. They should do away with all of it. Because of all the labor laws, which are stupid, which are minimum wage laws, which are stupid. Now, if he came to me and said, Mr. Cristiano, I'll tell you what I'll do. This is what I'm going to do. I said, I want to work for you for maybe 2 or 3 weeks. I do not want you to pay me a dime. Don't even buy me a cup of coffee. Don't buy me lunch. No, I want nothing. But after 2 or 3 weeks, I'm going to make you feel that the worst thing, convince you rather, that the worst decision that you can make is let me go. Think about that. Guy comes over to me, says, I will convince you within 2 weeks that one of your biggest business mistakes would be to let me go. That's how good I am. You owe me nothing. I'm not signing anything. I'll just go out. Now, I understand I'm going to take some of your workers that are going to have to train me because I don't know the job. I understand that. Right? If you would do that for me, and I will just observe. I won't work. I'll observe, so I'll learn. So I don't take any productivity away from anyone. I may ask some questions, so it may slow things down a little bit. Right? But I will learn, and within 2 weeks, I will be able to do certain functions. And you'll find that I am the best worker that you have ever seen in your life. Right? Now, if you do not feel this way and you don't have to prove it to me, there's nothing you can say, nope, I don't think you're made for this job. I don't think you're ever going to make it. Thank you very much. Goodbye. And it's over, and that's out my commitment to you. Would I hire that person? I'd be nuts not to. I'd be absolutely crazy not to. Because what do I have to lose as an employer? Now, remember, there's no minimum wage. There's no government. There's no contract. But this guy comes on, and he is good. What do you think I'm going to do? Pay a minimum wage? Are you nuts? I want to keep this guy. I will pay him whatever it is because he's going to make this company a return on on his investment. It's going to come back. And I don't want to lose that from a business point of view, strictly from a business point of view. I don't want to lose this person as an employee. Last thing in the world. Because if I do, that means I have to go out and hire somebody else. Someone else better walk in and make me the same deal again. And it's unlikely that person would. They'd come in there and fill out the application. You look at it. They don't know how to do anything. You got to train them. You got to pay. It doesn't make any sense. So there's an incentive for everyone. There's an incentive for me to increase the number of employees, to enlarge my business, because I can have people who really want to produce and become part of this network and improve. As the company grows, they have more opportunity within the company to become supervisors and managers and maybe even a part owner. But under today's restrictions, that could never happen. Now, if you're a high-tech guy and you open a high-tech business and it really takes off, some big company will take you over and you become a multimillionaire. Yeah, we hear about those. They're 1 in 10 million. I'm talking about the average worker, the person who has average company here in every town in USA. But we don't do that, do we? I want you to keep that in mind. While we take a break, we'll be back in 1 minute and 30 seconds. Thank you very much. Don't go away.
You're listening to Liberty Talk Radio. Political talk derived from a historical perspective. Not always palatable, but good food for thought. Pure libertarian talk with host Joe Cristiano. LibertyTalkRadio.com.
Express Test is your go-to company for on-site occupational health testing services. That's right, we said on-site. That means we will meet you at your facility for a free health and occupational safety consultation. Express Test specializes in hearing conservation, respiratory protection, and employee safety. We can help you establish viable programs tailored to your business and employee needs. For your free consultation, call 918-743-2929 or visit us at expresstest.com. That's 918-743-2929 or expresstest.com. Do you find yourself asking, what did you say? Aaron Cristiano of Ranch Acres Audiology has over 25 years of experience helping patients just like you.
Hearing requires conservation. We need to be aware and we need to be responsible for our own hearing health.
Understand more with a little help from Ranch Acres Audiology. Call 918-749-7711. That's 918-749-7711 to learn more. We'd like to thank attorney Constance Squires for her support of Liberty Talk Radio. If you want a comprehensive way to affordably avoid legal issues, call Constance Squires. For a free consultation, call 918-254-9283 or go online at isthyWillDone.com.
Steve Harden of the Harden Insurance Agency has over 30 years of experience designing family insurance protection, including retirement planning. Call 918-488-0024 or go to hardenagency.com and request a free in-depth estate and retirement evaluation. We look forward to earning your trust and helping you meet your life goals.
This isn't your typical talk radio show. This is Liberty. Liberty Talk Radio.
Well, we're back, folks. This is Joe Cristiano. You're listening to Liberty Talk Radio. We're talking about just a host of current issues and providing you with a different perspective. Now, you may not agree, and I suspect you would not agree with much of what I'm saying, but in order to truly appreciate what I'm saying, you have to think about them. And we don't think anymore because we're too busy watching television, because television tells us what to think and what to do and how to spend our money. But I really want you to think, and when you do, if you do think of these issues the way I am presenting them, be critical of yourself as well as being critical of me. I want you to be critical of me and I want to hear back from you and say, Joe, that sort of makes sense, but here's where your trolley went off the tracks, and spell it out. But please, don't give me, well, the Democrats said this, but I don't want to know any of that stuff. But I would love for you to call 646-652-4620. That's 646-652-4620. We have plenty of open lines. When you call, press the 1 button so I'll know that you want to ask a question or make a comment. And please do, and whether you agree or disagree, I really would love to hear from you. I'm not going to give you a hard time or hang up on you or anything like that. I'm not going to pull a Bill O'Reilly, okay? Let me put it this way. You know, I have an answer. Of course, I have an answer to everything. I have a solution to everything because I'm so wonderful. You know, you see Shark Tank, there's Mr. Wonderful. I'm the original Mr. Wonderful. You know, he's Mr. Wonderful Jr., you know, they just... Kevin O'Leary. And I teased my wife about that. I said, no, I'm really Mr. Wonderful, you know. But let me tell you how wonderful I am. Why are you laughing for, Preston? You don't think I'm wonderful?
No, I do. Just the way you're talking, it's pretty funny.
Oh, okay. Well, good. I hope everyone enjoys that.
we need your wife to call in and agree with all this.
Well, no, if my wife calls in, we may have a problem. We may have a disagreement. That won't work, you know. But, you know, Europe wants to be a European Union, you know. But when the European Union was not conceived, it was conceived back in the 1990s. But when it was finally formulated and codified, it was in, what, 2000? Was that about 2000? It was about the year 2000. I don't remember. It was around the year 2000, please call me if I'm wrong and tell me what year it was. But they decided to have a common currency. Well, to me that made no sense whatsoever because you have totally different political ideologies, worth ethics, productivities, even the manner in which they calculate their own economic data is totally different. And then you have €1. It didn't make any sense. But, of course, now that you're listening to me, the original Mr. Wonderful, you know, I can give you a solution to this problem. You see, they used a paper currency, the euro, which is similar to the dollar or to the French franc or the German mark or the Italian lira, whatever the case may be. And they printed it and they gave it proportionally. There's some sort of formula they used to give it to each country, you know, depending on the strength of their currency, etc. Well, big mistake. You see, you can't have a harmonious group when you have several states, and I think there are 22 countries in the euro now, 22, something like that, in the euro, you know, all having different, basically, economic systems and have a single currency. It doesn't work, right? Now, they could get rid of the euro, right, altogether, do away with the euro, and still have a common market. And you say, well, Joe, how could that possibly be? I do what I would never do, and that is, how about Bitcoins? How about a cryptocurrency? All right? Now, a cryptocurrency takes the banking system, the economic banking system, the Rothschild banking system out of the equation, and people are just simply converting their euros, their whatever currency they have, into a cryptocurrency which is common around the world. And in fact, you'll have a world currency. Now, I will admit that I know I studied cryptocurrencies. I totally don't appreciate it yet. I don't, and they say it takes a long time for it to really sink in, and it hasn't sunk in yet with me. But what if they replaced the euro with a cryptocurrency? Would you not have a currency that is worldwide? In fact, they would not only be in concert with one currency in Europe, but they would be in concert with one currency with the United States, because there are plenty of places that use cryptocurrency. And if they did replace the euro with a cryptocurrency, more countries would adopt that. In fact, I think Uruguay, believe it or not, South America, has adopted a cryptocurrency and got rid of the dollar altogether. So just think, you can get rid of that, and then each country can still have its own identity, trade the way it wants, trade for whatever cost it wants. Because what you're doing is you're getting the central banking system out of the monetary business. There's no more central business, no more central bank. Of course, the central banking system, the Rothschilds, the Warburgs, the J.P. Morgan Chase, the DuPonts, all those people, they're not going to like that, because they're going to be out of business. So what you're doing is you're taking the power from the bankers and you're putting it to the people. I mean, power to the people, what a way to go. Now, obviously, another way to go is to go on a gold standard. People buy gold and they can trade gold, because it makes no difference, what name is on the gold piece. If you go to a coin store, there's gold. I just got told there were 28 countries in the euro. Sorry. But they were, it makes no difference. You could have an American eagle, gold eagle, and if you go to Kazakhstan and you gave it to somebody, it's an ounce of gold. You can put Mickey Mouse on it. It would make absolutely no difference. Right? So you have a gold standard. Now that's a physical standard, but you could have an electronic standard, which is something similar to a Bitcoin standard, around the world as well. And you could have these two run concurrently, a gold-silver standard, if you will, because gold is kind of expensive for everyday things, but you can have a silver standard, a gold. And how about this? How about a gold, silver, and a copper standard? In other words, you can have certain coins made out of copper, like our old pennies, pennies prior to 1982. Some in 1982, but mostly all of them prior to 1982, our pennies were 95% copper. That means they had intrinsic value. They weren't gold, they weren't silver, they were worth a lot less. Well, that's why it was a penny. It was only worth a penny. So you could have a copper standard, you could have a silver standard, you have a gold standard, and it's automatic. You don't have to set any standards, but the marketplace will set a standard for it. If the cost of mining a penny is a penny, for example, then it's worth 1 penny in international trade. If the cost of mining a ounce of gold, for example, is $1,000, and I'm just making that up for sake of discussion, then that coin is worth $1,000 at minimum. All right, and you could have that standard as well as a crypto standard, and get rid of all of these stupid currencies that we have. Paper currencies being generated by central banks, inflating we don't even know how much money is out there. And then we have booms and we have crashes, and then you have people in bankruptcy, and then people can't get their money out of the bank, people getting haircuts. Get rid of all of that. All we have to do is replace the bankers, the Goldman Sachs, with real currencies. And a cryptocurrency is a real currency, because people are providing some measure of value in exchange. Now, I'm not an expert in cryptocurrencies. I've had it explained to me, and still my brain doesn't work right, because I'm old and decrepit, and I guess it's clogged up in there. But I can appreciate it, and I wouldn't mind having a cryptocurrency. I'd rather have a cryptocurrency than I would have a paper currency. My only concern of a cryptocurrency, in the event of a worldwide computer hacking problem, and if the computer goes down or whatever, you can't trade. But you can have cryptocurrency printed. You can say you can order it online, and they can mail you the actual cryptocurrency. And that would be a substitute for what we have now. Anyway, my point being is that the euro is founded on archaic principles, on archaic banking systems, and it was never. I said from the very beginning, the euro will never make it, and it won't. It won't. It is cracking apart. You have, if you take Europe and you draw a line halfway through Europe on latitude, excuse me, you will find that the southern part of Europe is in severe depression. Now, if you take the northern part, the southern part, and you mix them together, they're sort of a recessionary situation. But if you take Europe, the southern part, all of the southern part of Europe is in a severe depression. I mean, we have unemployment rates of teenagers now, 40% of young people. I mean, this is not a matter of, well, it's a little weak, the employment. No, it's disastrous. And governments, because they decided to take over the Keynesian philosophy of the government can provide economic stimulus by printing money and giving people pensions. And, for example, let me give you just a prime example. Every country announces what their GDP is basically on a quarterly basis. Now, our GDP is something like $17 trillion a year. I forgot. Do you know what Preston, you know what the GDP is?
I can look at it.
He's going to look that up. I forgot. I'll bet it's somewhere in the vicinity of $17 trillion a year. Tell me if I'm right or wrong. Anyway, right? But in that GDP, we have items like healthcare spending. Well, because it's an expenditure, it's like buying something, right? It's included in the GDP. Think of how insane that is. Let's assume for a second that there was a plague in a country, United States, any country, right? And as a result of that plague, 20% of the people were no longer able to work. They were ill. And the medical expenses of that country goes from, let's say, 10% of GDP to 30% of GDP. And again, I'm just making that up for the sake of it, right? Now, the GDP would have gone up exponentially. And you say, oh, geez, the country must be doing well. The GDP has gone up. Now, some of those people were working, and as a result of those people, 17.6 trillion. I wasn't too far off. Very good. Actually, our yearly debt is higher than our GDP. It's like 105, 106% of GDP, which puts us in the danger category, by the way. But you wouldn't say that economy was healthy because the GDP went up, because 20% or 30% of the people are home sick or in the hospital, and that's creating a lot of, purchases for, hospital care. You say, oh, geez, that country's doing great. I can't wait to invest in them, Wait until 50% of the people, become sick and medical expenses go up even exponentially again. Well, boy, GDP is doing fine. Soon, if everyone's sick, no one's working, GDP is going to go up, country's doing great. Now, I know that can't happen because those people who are ill, are not working and they're reducing the GDP. But those people who get ill, there are enough people unemployed to be hired. So you, in fact, will inflate the GDP, although your productivity is down and your expenses are up because you have newer people doing jobs that are not as productive. The people that are ill are not producing anything at all. They're taking money from the system. And as a result, the GDP goes up and go, hey, things must be much better this year than last year. When you look at the numbers, things are a lot worse and getting worse. Worser, more worsest, I guess, than they were before. So these GDP figures really bother me. And I'll tell you the one that really bothers me is when we say, the sales of things. I don't want to know about sales. I want to know about productivity. Back in the old days, the old days, my days and before, people didn't talk about buying. People talked about producing. What are you going to do with your life? That's the thing. What mantra was. What are you going to do with your life? My uncles used to say, hey, Giuseppe, what are you going to do with your life? You're stupid, though. And they were right. What are you going to do? Today we don't say that. We say, oh, where are you going on vacation? Oh, you're buying a new car. What do you watch on television? All that garbage. But in fact, we're not talking about productivity. Because you see, if we produce something, even if we're not the people who are buying it all, but we are producing it and selling it overseas and increasing the standard of living overseas, these people eventually will come back and buy from us because their standard of living has increased. In other words, we lift all boats when we produce. But we don't do that anymore. I just saw I think I'm repeating myself from last week, but I saw an ad on television. It was a car dealership. It said, want to buy a car? New car? No problem. No money? No problem. No payments till next year. In other words, it has nothing to do with you producing. It has everything to do with you staying in debt, indebted to the system, even if you don't produce anything and can't afford it. And this is the way our system works. And our GDP figures are not reflective of our economy. Right? When we had, I think, 220,000 new jobs created, a significant portion, a vast majority, 60% or so of them, were service sector jobs. What do service sector jobs produce? Nothing. They're waiters, bartenders, working at McDonald's. They're, people that have produced nothing. They're then producing anything. It's like my station manager here. He produces nothing, right? He's a station manager. He doesn't produce anything. But seriously, we're not producing stuff. I don't produce anything. All right, we got a caller? All right, we got a call. What line is that?
It's line 1.
All right, call on line 1. You're on the air.
Hi, this is Lisa from Tulsa.
Yes,
I was
Lisa.
wondering if there's any countries that do not follow the Keynesian philosophy of economics. And also, how are they doing? How are they doing?
All right.
I'll take my answer off the air.
Okay, thanks, Lisa. That's a good question. I've never had that question posed to me before. I think the answer is none. The one that comes probably closest, you will not believe this, but would be Hong Kong. And Hong Kong is part of China. But they have their own economic system. For example, I think it was Stossel that went over to Hong Kong or Singapore, either one of those countries, to open a business. And he went to this government-operated store, and it was interesting. And he said, well, I want to open a business. They said, here's a form, give me your name, with the address of the store, what you're going to do. And there was some minimal, like $20 to, and that was it. He was in business. And he said in the United States, you would have to go through hoops and jingles. In some countries, it is, in India, for example, virtually impossible. So I'd have to say if probably one of the freest countries in the world is China. But not mainland China, Hong Kong. And I don't know of any country in the world today that is truly based on our Constitution, which we should be, meaning that the people run the business. We have a free enterprise system. Our country was designed, that whole concept of a Constitution was designed under the concept of you can do whatever you want. You can pursue whatever dream you want, provided you do not jeopardize the freedom and liberty of others. In other words, you can do whatever you want, provided you don't interrupt anyone else. I can do whatever I want, but in today's environment, you need permission to do anything. Listen, if you're a 5-year-old kid wants to sell lemonade in front of the front lawn, they never even sell one, and a cop car pulls by, they'll haul that kid off to jail for not having a food license. We've gotten to the point where we do not have a free economic system, free enterprise economic system anymore. And Canada is worse. And, even in Canada, they're starting to rethink and saying, this is really not working. It sounds good, but it's not working. In some countries, there's no economic liberties at all, but they fake it. In other words, the small towns do what they want. There really are no restrictions. There are restrictions, but no one obeys them. And everyone sort of knows that no one obeys them, and they have a free economic system within their villages or their small towns. And everyone sort of ignores the fact that everyone is breaking all the rules. Those people, in fact, are more free than we are. And we're talking about countries in South America, like Uruguay, for example, which I think has done a marvelous job of keeping things level. They threw out all our military bases. They gave up the U.S. dollars as their currency, and now they're going to cryptocurrency and their own currency. And they sort of turn a blind eye to all the free enterprise that's going on in their country, which is sort of illegal, And I guess that's the closest one. If you look at even countries like China, people talk about China doing so well. China's doing very poorly, folks. I mean, they have dozens of ghost cities costing billions and billions of dollars, no one living in them because no one could afford them. And just to maintain them costs billions and billions of dollars a year. And they're building more. But they have to because construction spending is part of the GDP. Now we go back to the GDP. There's a case where the GDP of China is surpassing that of the United States. What are they building? They're building cities. No one's living in them. They're not producing anything. They're draining the wealth of the country, but they're just spending more money, so their GDP is high. All of this has to be suspect. So where is all this going? Well, if you listen to the likes of Peter Schiff and Harry Dent and Michael Pinto and our guest that we've had, Rick Rule from Sprott Asset Management, and several others, Dr. Paul Craig Roberts, Nigel Farage, from the European Parliament, and I can go on. There's hundreds of them. I'm leaving a lot of names out. Dr. Kotlakoff of the University of Boston. The list is nearly endless. But if you listen to them, we're in for a reset. In other words, every once in a while, Mother Nature gets kind of hacked off, whatever Mother Nature is, and says, okay, it's time for all this fal-de-la to reset. We need to come back to normalcy. We need to come back to what's right. We need to correct it. We need to be in harmony once again with Mother Nature. And there's a reset. And that reset is usually a depression, a financial crash, or whatever, because most of what we're doing now is what I call financial fal-de-la. It doesn't mean anything. It's very, very harmful long term. And when this happens, everyone loses. And the only reason why the European Union stays the way it is because they're protecting the banks, not the people. Well, the banks are going to suffer because you can't fight the banks, but there's one thing that you can't fight even further, and that's Mother Nature. And when Mother Nature decides it's time for a reset, a black swan occurs, system crashes in nanoseconds, no one could do anything. Everyone loses, including the banks. In other words, we have a reset and everything is set back to ground zero. So we all are on the same page. So I suggest to people that if we're in this phony world where we're trying to fool Mother Nature, shouldn't you prepare? Shouldn't you be doing something to make certain that if there's a financial crash tomorrow, and there will be, maybe not tomorrow, maybe not in the next 3 months, but there will be a financial crash, shouldn't you be sitting around saying, now, if in fact there's a financial crash, what should I do to protect my family? Just to get over the rough spot until things normalize, because it takes several months for things to normalize. What should I do? Well, I'm not going to tell you what to do. You know what to do. I mean, it doesn't take if you don't know what to do, you're brain dead. I mean, if you have no food in the house, if you're spending money on going to a concert and getting a ticket for $250, wouldn't it be better off if you took that $250 and you bought some staples for the home and some food that you can put into storage that would last a year or two, or even long-term food if you want the 25-year freeze-dried food, for example? Just have some of it on hand, have some extra water. In other words, prepare. I'm not saying dig a hole in the ground and go 50 feet on the ground. I'm just saying have things in case something happens today. You don't have to run out today just to eat. And forget about the concert. You don't have to go to that. And I know people say, well, I have to because I love going to those things. And they will suffer. So you need to take care of yourself, and you need to prepare. And there are many other things that you can do, and maybe we should have a whole program on that someday. What about that, Preston? We should have a program just on that, shouldn't we?
I think so. That would be very good advice for a lot of people.
Yeah, but I'll tell you why I don't talk about that very often. It's because people don't take any action. I mean, you can talk till you're blue in the face, be perfectly logical, give them an absolute game plan, and you know what they'll do? They'll go to the concert. Really, because I find it very frustrating. I have friends who ask me all the time, Joe, what should I do here? You study economics and all this, and that's what you do. It's your hobby type thing. You have a radio program. You speak to these worldwide economists. I speak to many of them. And I understand most of what they say. I'm not, a guru economist like Andy Sutton, who was on our program every month. But I appreciate what they are saying. And when they ask me and I give them some advice, never take it. I mean, they don't even do part of it. They go, well, yeah, I got to do that. Oh, but Taylor Swift's in town and I got tickets for $500. And so I don't bother because I just find it unnerving. And I guess I have no tolerance towards it. Anyway, folks, we've chewed up a whole hour already. You guys are so lucky to have listened to me for an hour. You're just lucky group of people, I guess. Huh? What do you think, Preston? Are they lucky?
Lucky.
Yeah, lucky is
lucky.
Yeah. Okay. We'd like to thank our sponsors for their financial support, and we'd like to thank you for listening in. You can further the cause of liberty by recommending this program to your friends, but let us hear from you. Our email address is comments@libertytalkradio.com. Remember, you're either allowing your liberties to be taken away or you're striving to protect them. Unfortunately, folks, there is no middle ground. Until next time, this is Joe Cristiano. You've been listening to Liberty Talk Radio. Stay well. Stay tuned.